Okay, welcome everyone to the Cartographer Community meeting. Today is the first day of December, and we want to give a warm welcome to the maintainers team and also to Scott Andrews and Cora. Welcome to the community meeting. Thank you for joining.
Hello.
Awesome. So let me share my screen here. And okay, that's something different. There you go. Okay. Yeah, please remind that the agenda is open. So feel free to drop in any discussion topic that you would like to add, and also your name to the attendees list. Should start. There you go. There you go. Okay. Now for the TLDR, and probably for the folks who are joining us for this meeting, we have section at the beginning of the meeting called the TLDR, where someone from the team, usually Josh, when he's available, we share what's new in the project this week and what the team is working on. It's a quick overview. So we can go straight to that item, Josh.
Yeah, just updating the notes there before getting started. Yeah, we have a lot of breaking changes in this week. We are, the first thing is we're updating the labeling on supply chains to be best match. So now your workload basically define, like your supply chain will go and it can define multiple labels and characteristics that it supports along the way. And then your workload it does a best match of all the available labels on the supply chain. So if your workload matches against one supply chain with, say, 2 labels and another one with 1 label, it'll pick the one with 2 as the one it matches against. Another breaking change we introduced is overridable params. So now when a template author specifies a param, that param can be overridden by the supply chain as well as overridden by the workload at different levels. So check out that issue. There's some interesting nuances there. The other big thing we did was we're reducing the controller permissions. So now when a workload propagates through a supply chain, it will actually use a service account that's found in the namespace of the workload to perform all of the different controller actions, so submitting different CRDs along the way. And then the other big thing that we've done recently is we've overhauled logging, just adding a whole bunch of like debug messaging and just some better, better messaging to make troubleshooting issues a lot easier. Yeah, so those are the big things. And then we're basically, right now, we're working on overhauling our docs, just trying to provide as much information on all the new stuff we've been building. We're also trying to get a release out the door. So we've gone through a couple RCs, but they're posted up in GitHub. You can check those out. And so, yeah, we're working towards finalizing a release. And then the last thing is we're probably going to be slowing down a bit over the holidays as we approach the end of December. So just another thing to keep in mind. So yeah, those are the things we've been doing.
That's great. So with issue 51 close, time to update README, maybe. Because
oh, the warning at the top. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Any question, comment on this? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Cora.
I guess on the controller permissions, is that something that require, I mean, I should look it up, but because I just was running into this actually. I was upgrading from one release candidate to the latest one in order to use the params from the workload, and I'm getting these errors that say that the Git repository object can't be created. So I was just looking at that actually, and about like 2 releases ago, I guess it said something about the service accounts, but I'm actually still getting it with the latest one. So I don't know if it actually requires, beyond just installing Cartographer, are there more roles that now have to be created?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, so basically, yeah, it will pick up a service account from the namespace that your workload's running in. And so it's a documentation update that we need to make everywhere. But yeah, basically you'll have to update your roles that get bound to that service account to make sure that you have all the necessary permissions to create all the objects that get created within that namespace. So Git repository is one of them, and then all the other objects in the supply chain that get created. So.
And if someone were to want to do this today, where would be the best place to look that up?
There's an example in the repo.
Okay.
So in there, under developer, I think there's like a service account that has a bunch of roles.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
It might be helpful to use aggregated roles if you have more than one namespace, so that you don't have to replicate the role configuration over and over again.
Cool.
Thank you. Welcome, Kara, Ivan, Milan. Glad to have you here. Okay. Next thing, well, previous meeting. We canceled previous meeting, so not exactly a follow-up. And now we have the open mic discussion section. The first topic was proposed by Rashid, but I think he won't be able to attend. So we'll go to next. I've been attending the CNCF Security TAG meetings. They have a supply chain security working group working on a reference architecture, a best practices white paper and a reference architecture doc. Right now, it's using a different set of tools, but there are many sections that are open to collaboration, for collaboration, and they ask, they made us an invitation. First thing, we could, whenever we feel we're ready, we could join one of the sessions to present Cartographer, the design philosophy, a demo. And part of the team there includes Mike Lieberman from Citi, who's also, I believe, co-founder of ChainGuard, and well, he's considered an expert on the supply chain security field. And he will also wants to see a demo and provide feedback for the project, even if in the future Cartographer is not part of a CNCF, or if we go to a different foundation, that's a totally separate conversation. It will be great to have more eyes and more feedback into the project. So the invitation remains open. As I pointed out in an issue yesterday, they brought up the SALSA framework. That like kind of the standard for what they would like to see in a demo that includes at least these steps that you can see there. And also to emphasize that you can make it, that Cartographer is flexible, right? That you can use different tools for different steps. So that's kind of the overall message. In parallel, I've been exploring the process with the Continuous Delivery Foundation, how to propose a project and all of this. Probably that's for a further stage, but so far there's an open invite from the CNCF Security TAG.
So an action item on this one, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I was gonna say an action item from this one would be to include Hector here, I think. We're actually presenting at the Anchor open source meetup later today to discuss not exactly this, but related topics. So yeah, including somebody from those teams would be really helpful because they're responsible for looking at these kinds of things.
Okay. elaborate there. Okay, that's great. Yeah, by the way, Cartographer will be part of the content in the Anchor OSS meetup. It will happen today. We announced it a couple of days ago, so it's interesting to have this collaboration between open source projects. That's great. Okay, I believe there's another item, blueprint and owner name discussion. I believe it was proposed by Rush, but I'm not sure. His Slack message. Yeah.
Yeah, this was something that I kicked off because I started using the term blueprint in code. I think that it's something that I had used in RCs before, but yeah, once it hit the repo, it became a larger discussion. Essentially, we've got delivery and supply chain, and they're both, they both create some logical object along with your workload and or deliverable. And so they're sometimes in code and then also just in discussions where we want to talk about what's that generic object that a supply chain and a delivery represent, for example. And I called it a blueprint, that they are blueprinting out these logical processes that are going to happen. And then what do we refer to their partner, that workload or that deliverable as? I've always liked order. Rash said that we had used owner at some points previously. And so that's what made it into the code. But yeah, we wanted to have a discussion. What do people think at a high level?
Owner feels very generic. It's like it happens to be the owner of the resources that get created, but that's like a more general term in Kubernetes context. I don't know if that's helpful feedback.
But is there is there a relationship between like a blueprint concept and the catalog, like a catalog concept?
You would have a catalog of blueprints.
I think the catalog is more about the templates, right? It's like the templates you choose between to create your, blueprint.
I'm a fan of blueprint. It's a concept we used in VRA. You create blueprints and then stamp out deployments based on blueprints. So I like the way it encapsulates the idea. So that, that's my opinion on that. I don't know if it overloads the term as we've used it, across VMware, but I certainly like the idea.
I would say, blueprint was the first term that I reached to, and I like it. I think the suggestion that Mark has is that, we are a cartographer. Maybe we should look for some mapping term. Map does seem to be, maps are a pretty basic data structure, so that wouldn't be great. But yeah, like, I don't know if there's some other map-like word.
Chart.
Would be good.
A chart or something.
Yeah.
Put a cartograph and then confuse everyone.
Or a graph? Would it make sense?
I'll say it. I don't think any of them will be as readily understandable as blueprint, but I wish there were a word that There was thematic and understandable.
I think an interesting aspect of it to me is that when you change the blueprint, everything that's using it also changes immediately. There's this like, it's not just a template that happened once and then only new things get created from it if it's if it changes, or get created differently if it changes. I don't have suggestions on how that should improve the naming, but I'm not sure if Blueprint suggests that or doesn't suggest that.
Is there a corollary to blueprint instead of owner? Like an implementation of a blueprint is a blank
Isn't
or something that implements a blueprint. I don't know.
I mean,
It's kind of good.
Sorry. You go.
I was just going to say that I don't think that I've never thought of the workload as. I think the workload as the order that a developer brings to this path to production factory, and with that order, they kick off the actual instantiation of the supply chain. So that's why I have liked the term order. I know Rash said that when he sees order, he thinks of like 1, 2, 3 order, and so that throws him. But yeah, I wouldn't. I think specifically to your question, Marty, I would call the actual thing the instantiation. It's the word I always reach for.
So just to make sure that I'm understanding the question here, the suggestion is because there's now deliveries, there's another like sort of like sibling relationship to a supply chain, and therefore this is an attempt to find a term that would encapsulate both of them. And then so that's blueprint, and the other one is just like, and when you leverage a blueprint to make a blueprint of your own, what do you call that? The thing that's going to actually instantiate the blueprint you filled in, you've customized, I guess, or you've personalized. Is that right? Is that a good summary of what we're talking about?
I think the first one was I thought that Marty was asking about what should we call workload deliverable, which have that relationship with the blueprint objects. So we've got this generic blueprint term. What's the generic term for the objects that they pair with? So
but it's just vocabulary, right? It's not actual objects. It's not actual Kubernetes resources. It's just a word lingo. Okay.
Yeah,
so
because our
they
controllers
objects,
share.
Right? The owner is referring to the duality of the workload and the deliverable object that the developer submits. Yeah.
Okay, so both on the ops side and on the dev side, the deliverable or the delivery have introduced siblings to supply chain and workload, and so now we need a higher level term. Okay.
For each of them, exactly. Yep.
I'm so partial to the like cooking analogy, so like recipe makes sense to me. But
It's recipe as opposed to blueprint, you were saying?
it's like you use a recipe to make something, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would the corollary to that be for workload and deliverable? Like, I think it's helpful to think of two terms that work well together to understand the relationship. Like,
naming is the worst thing ever. So call it
agreed.
something.
Like a recipe and a dish. Like, I don't know where you go with recipe, but
I mean, it fits with order, right? Because you order something and then you use a recipe to actually make the thing, right? You have ingredients which go into your thing, right? Like, I really like that analogy. That makes it really easy to understand. But we're also a supply chain, so it's like stuff doesn't fit, right?
Another good term that comes to mind is mold, because it seems to fit well. It doesn't sound good, but it's like a mold that you use to. I don't know how well that would fit.
There's also, I'm looking in Wikipedia, like wiki cartography, and just words that pop out. There's layout is here. A projection, map projection, but maybe layout map.
Got a plan.
Oh, plan.
We have so many
Let's
good
see.
ones for the blueprint concept or plan
Yeah.
concept, and none for the other one.
So we should work
was-
backwards. What's the best thing we have for the other?
I was gonna say on that a synonym for order is request. The dev brings a request and they get their supply chain or they get their delivery. Similar synonyms, bookings, commissions, reservations. It could also just be a constructor.
Workload is such a good word.
We could do a naming exercise, right? Like what we did with the name for Cartographer itself. Like, no, we're never gonna find a name that everybody loves, right? This is one of the things that I've learned about naming, naively. It's like we're never gonna find a name that everybody's like, yeah, that's it. So I think that like maybe the way forward here, if it's not pressing, is to just do like a super quick naming exercise in like an upcoming community meeting here, and just say like, these are what we're considering, let's not vote for them and move forward with whatever it is, right?
That sounds reasonable to me. Democratic action.
It makes sense. I'll add it as an action item to have this naming exercise. Man. Hi, can you listen to me?
Mhm.
Sorry, having some serious laptop issues. Okay, that's great. I will add the action item to hold a naming exercise. And yeah, the final point here will be to agree on the calendar for community sessions for the end of the year. So giving a look to the shared calendar and also seeing what other projects are doing, I will say that having our last community meeting for the year on December 15 probably will make sense. And well, cartographer office hours will be on December 13. And we could resume on the first week of January, if you agree, or it could be on the second week of January. But at least in December, I would say that 2 weeks from now, it's what majority of the projects are doing. I don't know what